So it has been a while since I last reviewed an episode of The Last of Us. So we are on episode 4 now. So we've got 2 episodes to go through. So just going to go straight into episode 4. I'm just going to go through the beat by beat of what happened in there. So Ellie plays around with a gun, which I found kind of weird because she was in a society that needs people using guns in defense all the time. Because she was in the Federal Military School in Boston. So she would have been trained how to use guns and would have handled guns, I'm sure. They probably would have wanted people trained on that as quickly as possible. So as soon as they're old enough to get out there. I don't even know. I mean, we know nothing about how life actually works in these environments. So who knows what the age is of when they actually send people out to do defense, out to do patrols or, I don't know, work around the city. We're not given that. So, we have no idea what she could have been doing in the school. But it's fair to say they had been training her to defend Boston. And then we have Joel siphoning 20-year-old fuel and mentions how it has gone bad. I think it's unbelievable that it still worked, but I appreciate that they acknowledge it, at least. And yes, they did the magazine scene and they kept it intact, which was very nice to see. And then you have a little bit of a bonding scene with Ellie and Joel, where Joel talks about Tommy and how he met Tess. And I love this backstory. And it gives Joel some decent motivation for continuing. And I think this is way better than the game. Because before, we never really knew about Tess and Joel. We didn't know how long they were together. We didn't know much about them at all, really. It gives him motivation. It explains a bit that she gives him motivation to carry on taking Ellie to the Fireflies. We get to learn a little bit about Tommy's history along the way, which was also good. And it does give a little bit of history of Joel and Tommy together as siblings, which again you didn't really have in the game, mostly because Joel had already abandoned him and kind of given up on his brother, because that's what the kind of person he was like. Tommy didn't want to do the things Joel felt like he needed to do to survive. Joel was having nothing. Tommy was having nothing to do with that, and so Joel cut him out of his life and treated him as if he was dead, essentially, giving no thought for him after that. Then they camp out for the night, and again, I really enjoyed seeing this and how the world. I really enjoyed seeing this, how the world works and how people just live in the world. So, Ellie doesn't really have any experience of this, but Joel does, knowing that you can't just light fires around because it would call people to, cause attention to people where you are. So he doesn't light fires. And then they pack up for the night. Joel, he keeps guard. I don't know if he intended to originally keep guard. It's just that Ellie mentions about, can people sneak up on us? And I think that would cause paranoia in Joel. And so he was, yeah, maybe. And then couldn't sleep after that, and so he just stood up keeping watch. Then they travelled. Now, I believe in the game, it was Pittsburgh, but for some reason, they've changed this to Kansas City. I have no idea why. Is it geological more? Does it make more sense for it to be Kansas City than Pittsburgh? From where they were in Boston?
Well, I hope we're close to where
I don't know.
we fucking be,
But yeah, for some reason they changed it to that. And they get ambushed. Because of course they do. And Ellie shoots a man trying to kill Joel. And it is a horrible, in a good way, it is a horrible scene, and Ellie looks traumatized from the experience. And I think they did a really good job of this, portraying her first real kill of a person, and how horrific it is from like just shooting him and not like putting a ton of bullets in him and making sure he's dead. She shot him, wounded him, and the guy was just laying on the floor bleeding and pleading for help. And like I get why Joel just killed him, because it actually does make sense in this occasion, because they did just try to hold you up and to kill you for your stuff. So you don't think if you help this guy and try to help him that you're not just going to get killed for it along the way. So, what he did does make sense in this situation. And then it turns out like Henry is working for Fedra and got somebody beaten to death. Why would you connect him to Fedra at all? That makes no sense. Because I'm pretty sure in the original, he was with a group of people that came to Pittsburgh because they were just like traveling through, and they got caught up in the mess that was Pittsburgh. And we don't really know about the people in Pittsburgh, but it seems like they just don't like outsiders and wanted to just shoot anyone on sight to protect themselves. It kind of makes sense for them. It's a short-sighted view, but apparently there's raiders around, so it kind of makes sense to protect the people you have by doing this. But it turns out some group routed Fedra from Kansas City. But they're just as bad anyway. And their leader kills a doctor because he wasn't immediately useful for basically someone who's mortally wounded. Like, the guy is going to die, so the doctor can't help. So what's she do? Doesn't keep the doctor around so the doctor can heal people and be of use later down the line. Just murder him immediately, because in this one instance he can't help. Okay, he helped out Fedra cover stuff up, but he's a doctor. How many doctors are you gonna find? No one else is going to have medical knowledge. Even if they work from textbooks, if you can find any, if you even work from medical textbooks, there's a good chance you're not going to be able to save people's lives. And then Ellie and Joel discuss her first kill, and Joel is a lot more human in the series than he is in the games. Probably Joel propaganda. Interesting to see the perspective of the city people. I mean, to a degree. Yeah. Like, in some ways, in most ways, it's usually better for things to be a mystery than for you to fully explain something. Just because then you can, like, make up your own mind is probably better than what the writers can make up, let's be honest. So they did this. It's interesting. I don't know if it's better or worse. In some ways, I'd say it's worse, because in the game you've got to work out for yourself from clues around you what their motivation is, rather than just being spoon-fed an answer. So I kind of prefer a bit of a mystery and trying to solve it myself. But now, so these people know Henry and Sam, which is a massive change from the game, because he was just an outsider with his own group going through. It turns out there's something in the basement able to rise and lower concrete. I would have thought it would just crumble in if it was just lifted up and then dropped back down. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not a structural engineer. I could be wrong. So yeah. Ellie and Joel are like bonding, having heart-to-hearts, and Ellie makes Joel laugh, which is nice. I don't think that ever happens in the game, but it's kind of nice here where you can actually see some bonding happening.
So where were you heading?
And then, surprise, Henry and Sam are here. So yeah, I did enjoy this episode, but yeah, so I really enjoyed this episode, and I think it is my favourite one so far. Like, we finally get to see a caring Joel. You know, and he has layers to him. Like, the game... Like, if that was the original intention, then the game utterly failed to impart that on me. Like, I never bought in on Joel giving a damn about Ellie, or anyone. You know. But I think it kind of works here. So if you want a more sympathetic Joel, then the series does a better job. I really enjoyed the travelling scenes and the joke scenes. And, you know, it gives the characters some soul, which I kind of like. Some. I mean, the games are much longer, so you do get more time with the characters. And in this episode, like, I'm finally starting to care a little bit about them. I feel like if only Bill and Frank had these kind of scenes to them, like instead of being in a Wonder Vision bubble for the whole episode, some tension and levity, you know, with some scavenging, etc. Maybe it could have, you know, maybe I could have loved that episode too, but they didn't. They were like in this pristine little town that almost never got attacked. They got attacked once, and their traps worked all the time. I mean, he went out and did some shooting, but it was mainly the traps that did it, from what we can tell. And then there's one infected that got killed by a trap. Like, you'd be better off if some infected started to come in, and they had to fight them off. And that's when they started to trap the place. And they worked together making those traps. And they had to go scavenging around in dangerous areas to find those traps, you know, find materials for those traps, and food to live on. Like, I don't know where they're getting all their meat from. They seem to have tons of resources, plentiful all the time. And it feels like it looks so pristine. Raiders would be coming all over the place for it. I'm surprised she's so loyal. Especially as you've got electricity and you're going to be lit up at night. They didn't show them covering up windows or anything, as far as I could tell. How are they not shooting? So I think this episode had a lot more of the things I liked than the previous episode. Like, I think it did a much better job. There was no infected in this episode, but you had some nice scenes of Joel and Ellie. You had some nice scenes of them just living in the world. You had a little bit of backstory with the characters from the city. I'm not sure how I'd feel if they just carried on with that. Like, maybe you've told us enough now as to why they're hunting down Henry, even though I don't really think you need a backstory for that. But yeah, I think this is my favourite episode so far in The Last of Us. And so now we're going to go on to episode 5. So episode 5 starts out with the so-called resistance fighting back against the Fedra in Kansas City. And Henry and Sam are hiding out, watching the events go down. So they made a big change here. They made Sam deaf. And it just seems like another pointless change to stroke the ego of the TV writers, to make them feel like they are better writers than the originals. That's the only logic I can come up with this. Why would you make such a change that doesn't actually impact the story at all? Like, him being deaf doesn't come up in the rest of the story. And he wasn't deaf in the original story. So why is he deaf in this? Kathleen, who seems... I think her name's Kathleen. But I'm going to call her Kathleen, so if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Kathleen, who seems like a angry librarian. Because she's really soft-spoken. And she doesn't feel like her character's been through anything. Like, she's angry, but she doesn't come off as, like, in pain. Or like, traumatized or anything like that. And I'm not going to fault the actress. She might be a great actress. But you gotta fault the people who gave her direction. Because she seems really out of place compared to everyone else. And yeah, she's in charge and she commands the execution of prisoners. So yep, she definitely has our flag of sympathy for her. Henry and Sam hold up in the attic, like we saw in the previous episode. And they were there for 2 weeks. And with the dead doctor not showing up, Henry and Sam go to leave and then witness John Ellie's arrival. Good job they were in the exact same part of the city. Awesome. Then the two groups meet, Henry and Sam and Joe and Ellie. They plan to go through the tunnels to avoid the librarian's army, and then pop out and cross the bridge to freedom. And then we have Joel propaganda. It continues. Henry had to give Fedra, Kathleen's brother, to them for leukemia drugs. He had to do a bad guy thing. To the audience, there is some understanding in what he did. And that is training the audience to be more understanding of people doing bad guy things. Yep, we've really got to get that hammer and whack that nail into the coffin, right? Gotta bash all that subtlety away. Bash it. So Kathleen, who feels massively out of place, yep, got her power off the back of her brother. Everyone loved her brother, who was like this greatest guy ever, who rallied everyone against Fedra. Henry gave him up to Fedra. Fedra killed him. And now everyone's doing what Kathleen says, because she's the sister of the guy who was in charge. Was there no second in command of the resistance? Like, why would you listen to her? So they, like, in this episode, they mashed together two parts of the story and, like, cut out the middle part.
Those dogs barking.
So when they're leaving, they don't go over the bridge in the end, or at least I didn't see them do that. Instead, Henry and Sam are just, like, pinned down by a sniper in a house. So more Joel propaganda. Joel sneaks around and goes in the house, and then Joel begs someone. He begs the sniper not to force him to kill them. Please don't make me kill you. Please, I beg you. I'm a great guy. Believe it. Please. And then the resistance come with a truck plowing through everything and a host of cars at its back. Joel saves the day by sniping the truck driver at the last minute. Then the librarian gives a speech about how Henry needs to die, and so do the children. Children die all the time, she says. Henry chooses to sacrifice himself. But then, just at the last minute to save him, the hive mind sends forth its minions to attack the resistance. And the resistance gets destroyed. And we have a bloater. It makes its appearance. And it does the death animation. Yay! And then we have to have more Joel propaganda. Joel is nice and friendly enough to invite Henry and Sam to Wyoming with them. Never happens in the game.
Who are they firing at? Oh.
But in this, Joel's a nice guy. Believe it. He's a great guy. He just wants to look out for Ellie, his daughter by association.
Oh, there's another one.
Sam shows Ellie that he is infected, making Ellie really, really stupid by not telling anyone and staying in the room with him all night and trying to cure him with her blood.
Oh shit.
In the morning, Sam attacks Ellie. They burst through the door. And nice guy Joe doesn't even think of going for his gun. No, Joel would never do such a thing. Oh, I could never shoot a child, even if it's infected, says Joel. But Henry, who never betrayed Joel, because he would never do something like that.
What can I even do about that?
He would never look out for Sam more than Joel and Ellie. He has to kill poor Sam. He has to shoot him. And not being able to take it anymore, Henry has to take his life. And then Joel and Ellie, being the great people they are, bury Henry and Sam, leaving a note. I'm sorry. They head west on foot. The show feels very Hollywood. You know? Joel can't be someone who cares about no one.
That guy to get up.
Joel can't be a gun smuggler.
Come on.
Bill can't have a failed relationship that happened through convenience. Which is quite likely considering, consider dating now and then consider what happens if if someone just happens to turn up at your house, do you think you're going to get on amazingly?
All right. We did it.
Or are you going to stay together because you're probably not going to find anyone else? And you'll be able to keep each other safe and look out for each other and look after each other and just be there for each other? Isn't that more realistic? Henry can't abandon people he just met to secure safety for his brother. Henry and Sam, they can't have a complicated relationship. Their relationship has to be flawless. Everything has to be perfect. You gotta have the perfect love story in episode 3. Even though it sends a bad message of almost advocating for ending it if someone you care about dies, which is a terrible message.
Yes.
And you can't have people having tough relationships overall in this apocalypse. I did like this episode. The changes baffle me. I don't. It definitely feels like writers are just egocentric and they have to stamp their mark on it. Like you're doing an adaptation. You're using somebody else's work. No one's going to think you're a great writer by changing things. If you want to show that you're a good writer, write something original. Don't just mess around with somebody else's story. People who have a story that actually works and is successful and people are invested in that. Do you think people would give you props if you decided to write Lord of the Rings and you got rid of Frodo and you just had Samwise head to Mordor by himself and then he teamed up with Gollum and Samwise were the bestest of buddies and they went to Mount Doom and then they wore the ring and Samwise defeated Sauron in one-on-one combat. Do you think people would think you're a great writer for that? No. They're going to say, what the hell have you done to the story? You're an idiot. Stop changing things. But yeah, I liked parts of this. I definitely did not like the parts with Kathleen, and she was in it so much. And we do not need the history and the backstory of every group we meet, okay? You can have some mystery going on. You don't... Why are we being told everything about everybody? Or, she was just a waste of time in the episode. You could have done something else with that time. All we needed was that Kansas City kill outsiders on sight. Henry and Sam have been there for a couple of weeks and have a plan. They were with a group. They were a bunch of outsiders. They came in. They got... their group got split up because they found out that the Kansas City people are violent to outsiders, so they got split up and went their own way. And Henry and Sam have been hiding out for a couple of weeks, and they found out a path to escape, they think, but they needed more people to get it done. Just like the game. So,
Who says that I'm not?
yeah, I am a bit torn about this episode. Because the action scenes are pretty good, the zombie scenes are pretty good, you know, the infected coming out. And I guess, like, the Henry, Sam, and Ellie and Joel stuff, it was kind of good, but kind of bad because of the changes they made. Everybody has to be sugar-coated in this. Everyone has to be a bit nicer. And the world has to be... like, it's bizarre. Like, the world's a horrible place, with all infected, and then you got the resistance murdering everyone.
Without any control of their body.
Yeah, you get rid of the conflicts of, like, Henry choosing to save his brother over Ellie and Joel, which is a logical choice, but they got rid of that because, well, they don't want Henry to be seen as a bad guy? Is that why?
Henry says that
Yeah, you had him have him sacrifice a resistance leader. Is it okay to make his character morally grey through that? Because we're not supposed to be invested in him, and we're supposed to be invested in Joel and Ellie, so he's worse if it happens to Joel and Ellie?
you don't.
Is that why?
I guess not.
Yeah, I like... So the next episode is them going to, like, meeting up with Tommy, and Tommy's already in the camp. Like, he never went to the hydroelectric dam. They're going straight to the camp in Last of Us 2.
Doesn't know about it. Can't take it.
Jacksonville, I think it's called.
All right.
So
I'm pooped.
I don't know where they're going with this. This series definitely has its up and downs. Some is like the last episode I thought was they did loads of things right and loads of things better than the game, and this is worse. Where would I rate this in the episode so far? I'd say so. Number 4, I'd say my favorite episode. Then I would say
Let him sleep in for once.
episode 2.
If you want him to join us,
So 4,
that's up.
2, 5, 1, and then 3. But they could have made 3 so much better if they had made it more in line with the other episodes.
Shit, he's turning!
And show Bill and Frank's episode and them working together and surviving together, rather than just telling us they're this great couple. Don't imply it, show it. Thank you for watching this. And yeah, tell me your views in the comments below.
Henry? Stay there.
Tell me how wrong I am about all the episodes, because I'm sure, as I'm not a big fan of this episode, everybody else loves it. But, you know,
Nobody's fault.
I can only be me. I can only like what I like.
Henry! Henry, no.
Can't pretend. Bye for now.